Hey guys, and welcome to the Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report presented by Angelo Di Paola, the Coastal Connection with eXp Realty. The first podcast to bring you the local inshore, offshore, and onshore fishing report, whether it's good, bad, or ugly. All right, guys, before we jump into the reports this week, we've got a really cool opportunity for you. We have partnered with AFCTO, and they are offering all of our listeners a free sun protection mask with any purchase of AFCTO products. They make a ton of great products for all types of anglers. All you have to do to get your coupon code is text FISHING to 314-665-1767. Again, just text the word fishing to 314-665-1767 to subscribe to our email list, and we'll send you the promo code via email. All right, guys, we have a great Alabama saltwater fishing report lined up for you this week. But first, let's take a few minutes to check out a few of this week's great sponsors. This week's Alabama saltwater fishing report is brought to you by Sportsman's Marine. Sportsman's Marine has an extensive tackle selection of anything that local anglers need for saltwater and freshwater fishing, as well as boating accessories. They have the largest selection of the slick lure in Mobile and Baldwin County. They have AFCTO, Pelagic, and Saltwater Fanatics apparel along with other local brands. Go check out their Edgewater, Wellcraft, and Vexus lines of boats. They offer engine services with 5-star Yamaha and Mercury mechanics. Also, if you're looking for a street legal electric golf cart, go check out their Atric golf carts. Sportsman's Marine on Highway 98, and they also have a downtown location next to Mr. Jean's Beans in Fairhope, Alabama. And also brought to you by Mallard Bay. MallardBay.com is the Airbnb-style marketplace for discovering and booking your next guided hunting and fishing adventures. The Mallard Bay platform was built by sportsmen for sportsmen. Their mission is to help expand access to affordable and successful hunting by connecting you with verified outfitters across the United States. You can browse trips and prices by state or species, select the dates you'd like to go, message outfitters, and secure your dates all from one platform, MallardBay.com. Not sure where you want to go yet? Reach out to them on Instagram or Facebook, and they can help you find your dream hunt. All right, folks, thanks for joining me again this week on the Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report. I'm your host, Butch. I'm joined today with co-host Tanner Deas with Dauphin Island Fishing. What'd you say, Cap?
What's up, man? Thank you for having me.
It's been
Glad
a little
to be
bit.
back on. Yeah, it has been a minute.
Especially since co-host, it's been a while.
Yeah, glad to be back around, talk about some fish, pick people apart, and figure out what they got to teach us.
For sure, man. We got a great lineup this week. We got Captain Adam Peeples on an offshore trip. He's been doing really well on the big tuna. Heard about a big swordfish. We got Captain Patric Garmeson, and we'll be talking to Captain Scott Kennedy over there on the kayak.
Nice, man. That's awesome. That's a good slate of reports. Gotta love hearing about some offshore stuff, especially if it includes a mud marlin. And
no doubt,
Captain Patrick's always whacking some fish over here, and Scott, man, he's one of my favorite reports all the time. That's something that I can do as a land-based guy or launch in my canoe, kind of match it up over here. I love hearing what he's got to say, so it'll be cool to talk to him.
It will be a good one, man. You been fishing some? What you been up to?
Yeah, been fishing some here and there, messing around with some sheep's head.
Still mad at the sheepies?
Still mad at them. Trying to dial in some speckled trout down on the island. They're roaming the lights and doing their thing. I know there's some wintertime trout around to be had, so.
Captain Scott, on the pre-report earlier, I checked with him. He said he had some good speckled trout trips recently. So
nice. That's always really good to hear, man.
Hear from that and hear what he's been up to and how he's been having success, you know.
Yeah, man, I love those fish and any fish. So anything we can learn about them to target them and catch them better than we do already is awesome. So I can't wait to hear it.
No doubt, man. Well, first we're going to go over to the Northwest Florida Fishing Report podcast and talk to my buddy Joe Baya. Talk to Captain Adam Peeples of One Shot Charters.
Let's do it.
And Adam, what you been up to, man?
Man, just doing a little bit of fishing finally with the weather and a little bit of hunting, but good to get back out on the Gulf. I know that.
Yeah, yes, I got the pictures already, so I know what you've been up to out there. But tell everybody what's been going on. I saw some big tunas.
Man, yeah, we found a real good tuna bite, which is what I would expect to find this time of year out there, out around the drill ships and the rigs. But man, it was good. It was good fishing. It was like, I want to say we kept 8 yellows, about 3 hours of fishing.
Wow.
And then fished for some big eyes for a little bit and caught 4 of those and about all we could hold. So we turned it on back towards the house at that point and headed back home. And daylight made a swordfish drop and caught one of those and back to the house.
That's awesome, man. You talk about 8 yellowfins in 3 hours. That's about as fast as you can catch those jokers. Those are strong fish, and they weren't little ones. Those weren't schoolies either.
No, you had some good anglers who knew what they were doing.
Yeah, y'all must have been working on them. Tell me about these big eyes, man. I saw a couple up around 200.
Yeah, man, I think I've got a dispute with Harbor Walk Marina's scale, man. Listen, I've put my hands on big eyes over 200 in the past year, and that one fish we had was bigger than all of them.
Really?
I mean, I would have staked it. I mean, he was huge, man, just so round and long. And I was saying, yeah, I thought 225 for sure, and it said 195 on the scale. I was like, maybe so. I don't know, but it sure looked big. I know that.
Interesting. Tell me about the big eyes, man. That's a fish that they seem to be kind of transient. Do you
Seems
find
like colder water. Seems like
Yeah.
whenever the water temperatures in the Gulf get a little cooler, they start showing up a little bit.
Is it a fall, springtime kind of thing, or are you catching them, year round now out there?
I mean, I've only really been successful with them in the fall, with any consistency, so I don't honestly know a whole lot about them in the Gulf. I know it's something that they target a lot up in the Northeast consistently up in the canyons there, but something that just over the last couple of years, something that I've really taken a liking to trying to figure out. And then I, got to eat my first one. And once I ate my first one, I really wanted to figure them out. So
that good, huh?
Yeah, they are fantastic, man.
I've never
It's
had
unreal how good they are. It's the crazy thing about a big eye is, so funny story. The first one I cleaned, never cleaned one, and I cut this thing open, and it as soon as I take the top loin off, I'm like, oh no, we burned it. Like, what did we do wrong? I'm like, something how we all, this is what we do. I take care of these fish, and I got to looking at it, and I wasn't burned, man. It's fat. These things have this layer of fat by their skin, and it's like kind of like belly fat is on a bluefin or something. It's crazy, crazy meat. But anyway, so it's the big eyes are incredible. They've got the loin. They've got like 3 different distinct meats there, and they're just good. It's like you took the best of a bluefin and the best of a yellowfin and smashed them together and made a tuna fish.
Sounds amazing.
It's awesome.
What were you seeing for water temperature out there, Adam?
Right around 78, where we were fishing. There was a pretty good temperature break just offshore of us, and it got a little bit, it actually, of all things, got a little bit cooler a little further off. But, yeah, man, right around 78, it really, I mean, we just haven't had any whole lot of cold weather really to cool it off.
Yeah, true.
So, yeah, it's still real warm.
Yeah, it's been pretty steady temperatures. I know we've had a couple of cold fronts, but it seems like we always get back up into the 70s during the daytime, and I'm sure that keeps the water warm. I was pretty curious though. You were talking about tunas and 8 and 3 hours. That's pretty freaking epic.
It's strong.
So, did you notice maybe a better bait, or what method were you guys using to get these? Were you live baiting? Were you chunking, throwing poppers? Were you jigging? I mean, what were you guys doing out there?
Yeah, so we were just doing some live bait fishing, and we hooked up a couple of doubles, and didn't really seem to matter, hardtails and little tunas and stuff we were using for bait. Didn't really seem to matter what you're putting out there. They were eating everything. It really was just the fact that the bite was wide open and they were chewing. We weren't doing anything crazy or special. They were just biting good.
Sounds like you were there at a really special time. I don't know much about tuna fishing, or I've only scratched the surface on offshore fishing at all. But did you notice, or maybe in your past history targeting these tuna, do you have a better bait selection for live bait, or do you have something that you've noticed you've caught more of them on? And then also, I've heard of guys, going from live baiting to chunking to another method to target them. Do you do that as well? Do you kind of switch it up, or do you kind of remain with the live bait the whole time?
Well, I'll answer your second question. And yeah, I mean, if a tuna is all they want to do is bite a chunk, I'd just rather not catch them personally.
Okay.
I'll fish. Yeah, I'll go. We'll do something else. I'm not chunking.
Fair enough.
That settles that.
Call it how you see it, Capt.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. I'm not doing it. But I just, for me, man, I just about always get them to eat a live bait. So it just depends on the time of the year, what's readily available to catch. A lot of the live baiting we're doing is heavier tackle live baiting, bigger baits like blackfins and stuff. But it really just depends on where I'm fishing and what's available. I mean, golly, the drill ship we were next to had a billion hardtails on it, all perfect size, So in that situation, it leads me to believe that they're probably eating hardtails.
Sure.
So that just kind of, it just depends. It's just very situationally dependent. Those dang tunas can be super finicky. They can be to the point where they just want one thing a lot of times, or sometimes like the other day, I think they'd eat anything you put in the water.
Wide open.
Match the hatch.
Adam,
Absolutely.
When you've got big eyes out there, those are big fish, close to 200-pound fish. Are they fighting harder, you think, than a yellowfin? Like, are you doing anything different with your tackle to be prepared for them?
Absolutely. Like I was saying earlier when I was talking about eating them, it's like you cross the bluefin with a yellowfin. Well, they got the bluefin fighting side of it. And, in fact, one of the guys that was with us on this last trip, he's caught a few bluefins, some really big ones. And he said, man, he really feels like the big eyes are probably pound for pound the strongest fish. And I'd have to agree, man. I mean, these things are just,
Wow.
You just know when you've got that bite, when it's him. I mean, it's not even within 5 minutes, you're going to know if it's him. It's just a different animal. And man, it's unreal. It's taken even on, we've caught a few of them quick, but most of these bigger ones are taking an hour and a half or so on heavy tackle.
That's a long time.
You catch a 100-pound yellowfin, how we're fishing them, we'll catch them in 15 minutes. It's just not the same way with these big guys.
Wow. Catching the fish is one thing, landing it is a whole nother thing. And it seems like when you start trying to land these big game fish, that's when a lot of things go wrong. I know when I've fished with you, we're catching swordfish, we're harpooning them. Are you always going to the harpoon? Do you feel like a harpoon is what you want on any boat you're out there fishing with, or do you still use a gaff at times? Take me through like your preparation in terms of landing gear.
Yeah, I mean that's situationally dependent too, but I would say generally speaking, I'm the only tunas that I like to dart are really big ones, like those big eyes, especially the big eyes. Or if I'm fishing by myself without a mate, which I do sometimes, if I've got an angler on the rod, I like having a harpoon simply because all I have to do is when the swivel's at the rod tip is just step over to the side and put a dart in them. So I do like it. Don't use it a whole lot on the yellowfin. It seems like with the yellowfin, a lot of times it's just easier to put a gap in them. They're usually pretty spent by the time they get up both sides. But the reason I like to dart the big eyes is just, man, there's no quit in them. And more often than not, the first looks you're going to get at them around the boat, they're going to be black backing. And what I mean by that is swimming, not laid over on their side. And I'll tell you, Jet, he made an incredible harpoon shot 2 trips ago on one of the big eyes on the 204. And we got that fish in like 45 minutes. But I mean, he hit that thing 25 feet down,
wow.
And I mean, we were nowhere near killing that fish otherwise. So
right.
To me, I do like the harpoon. It's nice to have. It's kind of an insurance policy to me. And especially it kind of depends on your crew too, man. I mean, listen, sticking a 200-pound tuna with a gaff can be a little intimidating, especially if you haven't gaffed anything big like that before. So, poking it with a harpoon is to me a little safer than just trying to grab a hold of a big fish.
I mean, especially if you can barely reach over the gunnels like Butch.
Wow, why is it gotta be
taking stabs at you, man?
It's not even cool. Hey, at least I can gaff a fish. Ooh.
Burn.
Oh man.
Well, I'm interested to know, earlier you kind of mentioned, burn and taking care of your catch and how that's something that you guys do a lot out there and something that you focus on. What is the best way, in your opinion, to take care of your tuna catch and kind of what's the process that you like to do there?
Yeah, so it's pretty simple what we do. And I've played around with bleeding them and this and that. And, we pull these fish on board. As soon as they come in, we have what I call the Viking spike, which is this huge hand spike, basically. So a lot of times, even before we bring them all the way in the boat, we do it. We hit them with a spike. It usually gets one flop. They'll flop one time, and then that's it. So it takes out their central nervous system, so they're not going to flop around all over your deck and beat your deck up and beat the meat up. I mean, if you get one of those big things flopping on the back of the deck, and it's messing itself up and probably going to break something on the boat. So yeah, we do that. Take pictures, and honestly, the bigger it is, the longer I like to let it sit on the deck and just slowly cool off. Because when you catch those things that are really hot, if you go from big fish right in the boat, he's really hot, to ice bath, that's where you get your burn. So yeah, man, we just let them sit on the deck for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40, sometimes longer if it's not hot or if it's nighttime, till they're good and cool, and then we put them on ice.
That seems like a really, really good tip, man. I know people are, spending thousands of dollars in fuel and investing in gear and
Gotta take
all
care of that
that.
stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we do it inshore. We practice bleeding our fish and branding our fish, and it doesn't even matter nearly as much, but it changes the edibility and the keepability of the fish.
Big time.
you know,
Tremendously.
Yeah, multitudes. And
Mhm.
so I was just curious, man. It seems like something that people would really want to pay attention to and to take care of their fish. And I've never heard anybody leaving them on the deck. Like I said, I don't have a lot of experience, but that seems like a really cool tip and something people can do to care for their fish and their harvest.
Yeah, I mean, that may be somebody else's complete opposite way of doing it, man, but it works for us, and the fish come back looking beautiful. So that's what we do.
That's the goal.
Adam, you mentioned that you've played around bleeding them. Are you still doing that? I mean, once you get them in, you spike them. Are you going ahead and bleeding them then, or are you feeling like it doesn't matter?
No, man, we don't. They
Wow.
typically lose a good bit of blood being gaffed or harpooned anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And man, I feel that just killing the fish quickly is the most important thing, because as soon as you do that, the lactic acid is ceasing to build up in their flesh, and they're going to stop overheating, shutting everything down. I mean, listen, here and there, I may bleed one just to see if it makes a difference, and every time I do it, the meat to me looks exactly the same and tastes just as good. So I just don't do it anymore.
That blows my mind.
Interesting. Well, tell us about this swordfish, the little cherry on top to get it done. Has the swordfishing been, and do you look for it to be good this time of year?
Man, it can be really good this time of year. I've had some great days. I've caught some really nice ones this time of year. And has it been good? I don't know, because the weather hasn't let me go fishing. I want to go bad, especially after pulling in there and making one drop and fishing for 5 minutes and getting tight. Yeah, I want to go and go after them. But yeah, I would, man. I mean, we had a really slow year at the spur, in my opinion, on sword fishing. It wasn't nearly as good as the last couple of years have been. There was a lot of periods where there just wasn't very many fish around, even though the conditions were what I would consider to be good. So they got to come in there sometime. And I would say that it's, probably gonna be a pretty good winter and probably a pretty good spring. I'm guessing right.
Well, man, that sounds like an awesome offshore report. Really, like you said, if you can find that weather window and get out there and get after them, there's going to be fish around. Find the bait, find the fish.
Adam, talking about
Absolutely.
sword fishing. Yeah, I've fished with you a couple of times doing the sword fishing thing. Do you do anything different depending on the time of year? Or are you just still kind of running the same setup, running, one or two out of the rod holder, or what's your setup?
Same deal. I mean, you got to think of it. Seasons are changing, temperatures are changing for us, but it's the same old for them down there. It never changes. It's always consistent, and it was for daytime fishing anyways. Now, their patterns and where they go and where they move changes throughout the year, but as far as how they feed and the depths they're feeding at, it remains the same. So yeah, we just go do what we do. I have found that as long as the surface temperature stays in the 70-degree range, 70, 69, 70 and warmer, I seem to catch a lot more fish. Once it gets colder than that, the few years it has gotten colder than that out there, it's been slow. So I don't know if that correlates or not, but I have seen that.
Well, man, we certainly appreciate you sharing the offshore report. It's tough to get one this time of year. It can be. I'm glad to hear you got out. Hopefully you can get out again this week coming up. What do you have in mind for a tip for our offshore anglers this week?
Yeah, so got back to sword fishing. I was talking to a guy, and he was relating to me that I've been talking to him throughout his whole sword fishing, getting started and trying to figure it all out, and he's caught a few fish. And he was relating that he had been having a hard time with the buoy rod and fishing a buoy rod, and it was getting tangled, and this and that. And I said this, listen, why are you fishing a buoy rod? Is my question. And I guess what I'm getting at is like, don't overcomplicate things for yourself. Get proficient at fishing a tip rod. Get good at it. Get comfortable with it. Then if you want to fish a buoy rod, fish it. But to me, in the Gulf of Mexico, a buoy rod is almost counterproductive because, we don't have very much current, which means you can kind of fish your bait with the boat, go different directions and pull the bait around. Once you put the second rod out, you can't do that anymore. So, let's say you drift through an area you want to get a bite at and you don't get a bite, you want to go back through there. Well, if you've got a buoy rod out, now you got to pull your whole setup in and reset your whole drift to drift back through there. Whereas if you got one line down, you just turn the boat in the other direction and pull it back that way. So that's, there's several reasons. And, I've seen a lot of new guys getting into sword fishing, and they're just gung ho. They see like Nick Stanzik and these guys down in South Florida putting 2, 3, 4 lines out. And apart from it being incredibly technical, I don't think it increases your chances up here of catching fish. Personally, having fished a buoy rod a lot, in my opinion, I think you should just leave it at home and fish the tip rod and put a live bait out on top or something. I think that's what. Anyways, the tip was, hey man, just simplify things, get good at. You've got plenty of a chance of catching a swordfish on the tip rod. There's no reason to jeopardize catching that fish by putting a buoy line out and getting yourself tangled up and overcomplicating things for a green crew. I guess that's my tip for sword fishing.
That's a really good one, man. The further and further I listened, I wrote down a question at the beginning. I was going to ask, do you like your tip rod more, or your buoy rod more? Listening to you talk about it, sounds like you like the tip rod a lot more. Those mud marlins are so interesting, man.
Cool fish.
Captain Richard took me out, I don't know, a few times now, and I mean, they will just get you addicted. And so I was just curious. We hooked up on the buoy rod once or twice, and we missed both fish. And it seems like when we hook up on the tip rod, straight under the boat, that hookup efficiency is a little better. Do you prefer the tip rod for that reason?
So that's another reason I also prefer it. Yeah, I mean, we're going to catch 4 out of 5 fish that bite on the tip rod.
Oh, that's badass.
And I mean, on the buoy rod, it's just the luck of the draw. To me, I mean, shoot, think about it. You're in there, and what if there's only a couple fish in there? And then what if that one of those couple fish goes to the buoy rod and fouls himself up on that thing? Well, you just missed. He's not coming back to your other bait.
Yeah.
So now you've just not only lost a fish, but you've decreased your chances of catching another one for the day. So, man, I can go on forever why I don't like to fish them up here. I think it's a great thing in South Florida, where they're drifting for long drifts and they're covering lots of ground and they have the current and their drift is set at a constant. Why would you not do it? But up here, man, I just don't think it makes sense.
That's a great tip.
Well, Captain Adam, we definitely appreciate the report, man. If folks want to link up with you, I would imagine you've probably got a few dates that you may be able to book here before the end of the year. But also they need to be getting in touch with you after the first of the year and looking into 2023. What's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, man, I just recommend checking out the website. It's got all of the information on our trips and the types of trips we offer and the rates and all of that stuff. And of course, it's got all of our contact info, email, phone, all that good stuff. So that's the first place they should start.
All right, Adam, thanks a lot, man. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Adam. Talk soon, buddy.
Absolutely. Y'all have a good one.
Well, normally when it gets cold, I'm thinking about which tree stand I want to get into, but now I want to go catch a big eye.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. You better start working out before you can wear out one of those dudes.
Oh, no, man. Big eyes. You see this right here?
Peak physical ability?
Oh, yeah.
Big that eyes. Office chair will get it done, man. I'm telling you.
Those big eyes ain't ready for this. What'd you learn there, Tanner?
Like I said earlier, kind of when he was talking, I've really only scratched the surface offshore fishing. And I have done some sword fishing with Richard and once on my own time. But, we've put the buoy rod out there, like Adam mentioned, and we've missed, 2 or 3 fish. And maybe from now on, I think I'll take away from what he said is, fish that tip rod and really focus on that. And he talked to somebody that he's been helping dialing in the fish with, and they miss some fish, or maybe the fish get tangled up and they're not going to eat again. It just makes me not want to worry with the buoy rod, man. And when you're out there trying to get a swordfish, and like I said earlier, you've spent all that money going out there and gas and everything else, you want to maximize your chances. So maybe just walk away with what he said as far as targeting swordfish and doing it with 1 or 2 rods on bottom and not floating a buoy out there way behind the boat and, trying to get a fish and maximize my chances, quote unquote. And then I miss a fish. And, the thing that I could do most is focus on my one bottom rod or my 2 bottom rods, and then that's it.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a great tip, man. It sounds like he really whacked some fish. So I'm going to carry that one for a while.
What about you, Butch?
For sure. Yeah, man, kind of all along the same lines. Definitely makes sense to me, staying maneuverable. I've definitely had that happen a couple times, doing the drift or bumping the boat in and out of gear. Like, man, I'd really like to go over that spot again. And you just put her in reverse and make sure the line's fine and back up over that canyon or that hole or that valley or whatever you're fishing again.
Mm-hmm.
Like you and I have been talking about, I don't remember if it was on our Hunting Land podcast or what, but focus on getting good at that one thing that you're good at. Like you and I have been talking about getting really good at that 30-yard and below bow shot.
Right.
Master that before you think about stretching your legs into that 50, 60-yard shot. Just get really proficient at the chip shot or whatever, is very successful. That's what I picked up.
Yeah.
Focus on that tip rod, get really good at it. Make sure you're hooking, 80, 90% of your bites. And if you're still doing really well with that, then venture out into a buoy rod.
4 out of 5 is an incredible ratio
strong
on sword fishing. Like that is,
of course, he's the Iceman.
I'm 2 for 7 on my whole sword fishing career. So 4 for 5 in one trip is, nuts.
Yeah.
Well, Adam does it. If there's a guy who knows it here on the Emerald Coast, it's him. And you can take whatever he's saying to the bank. Guys, I got to wrap it up for my show. Y'all got to get back to yours. And it's been fun.
Enjoyed it.
Fun having y'all on.
See you next time, Cap. All right, guys, that was a great offshore report from Captain Adam Peeples over at Destin, Florida, the One Shot Charters. You guys take a quick break and check out a few of this week's sponsors that bring you the podcast for free each week. That segment was brought to you by the East Tennessee Fishing Show and Expo. The East Tennessee Fishing Show and Expo is back January 26th through the 29th at the Knoxville Expo Center on Clinton Highway. EastTennesseeFishingShow.com. More dealers, more vendors, more exhibits than ever before, all under one roof. We got bass, crappie, trout, walleye. If you fish, don't miss the latest fishing gear, equipment, and apparel. Also custom tackle, lures, rods, and reels, and more. January 26th through 29th, $12 for adults, $8 for kids, 5 and under are free. Tickets are available online or at the door. There's also free parking. Learn more at EastTennesseeFishingShow.com. And also brought to you by Foster Contracting, Fortified Roofing Pros. Often when a business is small, you miss the professionalism you get with larger companies. That's not the case with Fortified Roofing Pros. They're a family-owned business that is big enough to get the job done, but small enough to care. If you're looking for quality construction with a dependable, licensed, and certified fortified roofing professional, give the Fortified Roofing Pros a call at 251-973-9999. Remember to support the local businesses that make your local podcast possible and check them out at fortifiedroofingpros.com. All right, Tanner, let's head on down and get our inshore report for the week, man. It's been a little while since we heard from ugly fishing, old Captain Patric Garmeson. What'd you say, Cap?
What's up, guys?
Watching it blow right now.
Yeah, stayed home and played with my poles today.
It takes it, don't it?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, some people may know it or not. I keep my boat over at Taylor Moreau's house, and he captains a little bit for me, and he was my sidekick today, and we did a little rod and reel kind of consolidation and just going through some gear, and I told him, I was like, man, it's really unbelievable that I can go for like so many days and trips and weeks on end without like really stopping to do this. Cause it took me, we spent an hour and a half messing around with rod and reels and stuff. And it's like, it just piles up, but that's just part of that's the old guide life, I guess.
That's right, man. Taylor's jam up. He's a good dude. I'm just a good person to have running for you every now and again. And I'm sure good guy to help you get all your stuff together, working at that tackle shop over there. I'm sure he knows a thing or two.
Yeah, well, Taylor's been he's ran several trips for me this year and been getting good reports back. So that's the important thing is happy customers.
Good.
That's right. He's a great fisherman as well.
Yep.
What you been chasing?
I think probably over the last 10, 15 days or so, it's pretty much been all out of the causeway. And man, it kind of continues to be a bit of a yo-yo on all the species. One day, like we came right behind that cold, and there were trout all kind of in about 4 or 5 different areas, pretty catchable. A lot of it was birds giving away the fish, and a tremendous amount of white trout. So if you found a school of birds working and you threw in there and you let your lure or whatever sink any amount of depth into the water, that was just going to get chewed up by white trout. But what I figured out was if we kept our lures up way up on the surface, it worked to our advantage on catching some of those speckled trout. And Man, the numbers weren't like off the charts great. They were nice and consistent for a few days when we had that cold weather, but some quality is there. Like there's some really, really nice fish, 15 to 20-inch trout. And a lot of them are about as big around as they are long. So they're nice quality, nice quality fish. Actually had a white trout one. Had a white trout I was bringing in. I hooked it on a slick junior, and this white trout was about 8 inches long. And when I swung it into the boat, it fell off the hook and it landed in the floor of the boat, and it spit up a shad that was about the same size as the slick junior, and it had shrimp whiskers hanging out of its mouth. So these fish,
ferocious.
Yeah, whatever. If these fish are carnivorous, they have plenty to eat up there, and still no shortage of bait. But outside of the speckled trout action, kind of one of the things that we were doing, we were throwing the slick juniors and having a lot of luck, and then throwing some lipless crankbaits, and had a really, really good morning throwing lipless crankbaits on catching speckled trout. But man, I tell you what, it was, as I mentioned earlier, it's a bit of up and down, kind of yo-yo, and we had 2 or 3 days in a row where speckled trout fishing up there felt real good and fishy, and man, everything's right with the world, and then go back into the same general areas and it's ghost town. There were still the white trout were there, but the speckled trout were either far and few between or just not there, period, as far as feeding for us. So then at that point in the time, I just shift gears and go see if I can hunt down some redfish or sheephead, and things have been working out. Just catching, just kind of keeping my options open. Heard a saying the other day, you can either revolve or you can evolve, and I try to evolve as much as possible instead of running around trying to do the same thing over and over without it working. So try to evolve and take advantage of what's out there.
Solid tip.
For sure, man. I want to talk about the crankbaits a little more. How are you working them? And are you throwing those into the bird flocks and fish schools? Or are you trying to find, or is it a different application? You working points, or, what's your application and how are you working it?
Our best results the day that we really, really had a good stringer of fish on throwing those lipless crankbaits. We were mostly throwing at birds, but it wasn't a real situation where we had just like wads of birds and it was just like a feeding frenzy and trout busting on the surface. It wasn't like that. It was more like about a half a mile stretch of the river where there were just birds hitting the water all over the place. And man, we were just drifting downriver and just chunking wine, man. Just throw it as soon as it hits the water, engage that reel, and just start pumping and winding. Pretty quick pace. If you let it sink, as I mentioned, the white trout were there, so you would. My customer actually hooked and landed 2 tiny white trout on a lipless crankbait. So
they are hungry.
2 for 1.
Yeah, if it sank much more than about 2.5-3 feet below the surface, that's what was happening. But yeah, just really cranking and chunking and winding. Our water temps on those days were like, depending on where we were seeing 57 to 59 degrees, and then there were other fish that we caught where we were just drifting and just fishing like up towards the shallow ledges of the rivers and bringing it back out, and a lot of those fish were kind of on those ledges and ambushing that crankbait as it was coming over the ledge.
So you mentioned these crankbaits, a lipless crankbait. Maybe I'm a newbie or something. I've not heard of a lipless crankbait. What's the difference in a lipless crankbait and a twitch bait, and what depth is that bait swimming at?
Well, lipless crankbait, most common people are going to say is a rattle trap. We were throwing I had some booyah hard knockers. So you have the booyahs, you have rattle traps, you have Strike King makes a red eye shad. There's a bunch of different brands, but a lipless crankbait is one that once you start retrieving it, it's going to pretty much maintain that depth at whichever. So like you could throw it out and you could count it down to say 8 seconds and then start cranking it. And it's going to pretty much run that depth until you get within say 20, 30 feet of the boat.
They start coming back up with that lip. The lip is what catches and digs down deep.
But he said it's lipless.
That's what I'm saying. So without the lip, it's going to maintain that same depth.
Okay, I see what you're saying. All right.
Yeah. So you're in control. It's a manual lure. So you dictate the depth based on your speed, the angle of your rod tip. I like to do it like if I have no idea at what level of the water these fish are going to be in, I'm going to start my customers. I'm going to say, hey, I need you to just chunk and wind. Just throw it out, engage your reel, and just start burning it back. The next guy, I'm going to say, hey, let that thing sink all the way to the bottom and then start yo-yoing it back. And yo-yoing it being like reeling your rod tip down and then pull it up. Reel it down, pull it up. So you're constantly doing these big pumping motions. And then somebody else, I'm just going to be like, hey, man, just free for all. Just do whatever feels right.
See what works. Whatever your heart desires.
That's right. But generally, you're going to find one method's going to be productive for that day. Some guys, the bass guys, what I've heard them do is they rip it. And that's where they'll throw it out, they'll let it sink, and they'll rip it, like just pull it about as fast and as hard as they can, and then they'll throw the slack to it, and then let it sink at its own natural rate of fall. And then once it gets tight, they rip it again. I haven't really used that technique a whole lot with speckled trout. I tend to be more of a yo-yo. I like the one downside to these lipless crankbaits is when a trout hits it with a full head of steam, a lot of times you'll hook them and then it'll pull off because they just hit it so fast and so aggressive. And then if you're pulling it hard and doing a lot of really strong rod movements and the fish hits it at that same point, it's going to be damn near impossible for that fish to stay hooked up because y'all know how soft a trout's mouth is. Mm-hmm. So I like to be able to have a little bit of forgiveness there. That way, if that fish hits it, I can have some flex in the rod and be able to give that fish a little bit. So it's a fun technique. It really is.
You mentioned several brands there, and they all sounded like freshwater lure brands to me. Is that what's going on there with these lipless crankbaits? Is that typically a freshwater lure that you've kind of adapted to catch, saltwater fish?
Yeah, definitely is. It's a predominantly a bass lure.
But I mean, if a speckled trout bites it, then it's a speckled trout lure.
Oh, it counts.
That's exactly right. Well, Rattle Trap does sell some saltwater versions. I think they beef up a couple of components and then throw some galvanized hooks on there and call it a saltwater version. But I just give me the black nickel hooks and replace them every so many trips. But they're a speckled trout catching lure in the winter, cooler months and the colder months. There's guys over in Lake Pontchartrain. It's a big technique to go over there and they troll the 3/4 ounce rattle traps. They troll them along the bridge along in Lake Pontchartrain.
Very cool.
And get where they get they'll let it sink all the way to the bottom before they start trolling with the boat and get those things down deep digging and catch some big trout over there like that. And there's some opportunities with it in our waters. Caught them trolling like in Dog River and
tributaries, yeah,
and in Foul River,
or tidal rivers, I guess.
Mm-hmm. If somebody likes to do a lot of casting, because like I said, if you're doing a chunk and wind, you're going to be doing a lot of casting. But man, it can really reward you with some really nice quality fish. One of the better trout, like just kind of just one of these memories that comes up is me and my buddy Jim Foster, we were fishing in the Spanish River. This is probably a decade or more ago, but we saw a few birds starting to hit the surface, and we went over there and started throwing these rattle traps, and made one drift, and we caught like a 4-pounder and 2 6-pounders.
Wow.
Oh,
And
that's incredible.
and we were like, man, that's pretty awesome.
I guess
Took
that
some
works.
pictures.
Pretty sweet.
We took some pictures of our fish, and we circled around, and boom boom, we catch 2 more that were over 5 pounds. And we had one of the BOGs coming up the following, like the upcoming weekend, and we were like, man, do we
Right.
it doesn't seem like it could get any better than this, so let's leave these fish alone. And I don't know, man, it was one of those moments that'll forever be burned in my mind, of catching these giant trout, and it was just so quick to happen. And then the tournament came up. We had a cold front that came through. Our water temperature went from 57 to 51. Those fish moved, and we did not catch them. So
It's a good story, though.
Go figure.
Man, in hindsight, I wonder how many we could actually caught if we would have just kept drifting it over and over. But
yeah,
yeah,
don't do that to yourself.
Well, it's still a very fond memory to be able to talk with Jim about, and also tell stories to guys like Taylor, who's, I don't know that he's broken 6 pounds or maybe just once or twice in his life, and we like, yeah, it's no big deal. Caught a couple 6s, couple 5s.
Yeah,
it's just torture. I know from experience. So
yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't catch a 4 to 6 pound trout in their life.
Yeah,
y'all did multiples.
Yeah, it was a fun stretch, man.
Before we move on, I want to talk a little bit more about the Slick Junior, if you don't mind. Have you been? I know you can throw it, with one of those swim bait hooks or under a popping cork. Have you been having success with either or both?
Actually, neither. I've been throwing it on a jig head made by Strike King, and the eye of the hook, or the eye of the jig, kind of comes out the nose of the jig head, so it'll pull fairly straight. And man, I just like the exposed hook and the forward weight with the 1/8 ounce jig. That has been the absolute best way for me to catch fish. I find that a lot of fish bite it when it goes to fall, and I know the fall is a straight
dead fall,
vertical fall.
Yeah,
it's a vertical fall. The bait's not horizontal at all, and I know Uncle Joey is a big proponent of the horizontal fall of the OG slick, and I find that these fish annihilate it on the fall with it going vertical, not horizontal. And that is 100% been my best results. I've caught them on the swim bait hook, but man, I really feel like just like hopping it and letting it fall, and they're hitting it on the fall almost every time. Very rarely am I catching them when it's just steadily moving. So,
well, that's awesome to hear, man. That's a really great lure. I also have found success in my personal time throwing it on a 1/8 ounce jig head. I've not even tried the swim bait hook, and
actually I've tried it a bunch, and I don't think, now that I think about it, I don't think I've ever caught one on it, but I've had success with trout and flounder on the jig head.
Now that I hear him talking about, just using the jig head, I don't know that I'll ever use anything else.
Yeah.
Have you found a color of the Slick Junior that you like, more or less in clear or dirty water?
Swamp Thing is unbelievable. Like I can't tell you how many Swamp Things I mean, hands down. If you gave me the old golden question, you had one lure for the rest of your life,
that'd be it.
The Swamp Thing, Swamp Thing Slick Junior is going to be real high up on that list. But outside of that, let's see. The B-Cat has been a real close second here recently, now that we've gotten a little bit of color and a little bit of stain in the water in a lot of these systems. Actually, surprisingly, in the Delta the other day, one day we were catching them. I mean, just the swamp thing was just annihilating every color we threw. And then a day or two later, we were throwing the swamp thing, and then I just threw a B-cat on just to try it, and the B-cat started outperforming swamp thing. So it's not a end all be all, but the swamp thing has definitely been really crushing it for speckled trout for me. And then the B-cat a good.
If it ain't chartreuse, it ain't no use.
That's what Dylan always says.
That's right.
What about redfish, man?
Yeah. So redfish up there still for me. Now I talked to some of these guys at the bait shop, and they're like, "Man, I can't get away from redfish." Well, they must be more specifically targeting redfish in ways that I'm not. We're catching them. We're still kind of catching them more on the bycatch side of things, catching them on some little slicks or slick juniors when we're fishing on or near the bottom. We're catching with some shrimp whenever we're sheephead fishing, or maybe we've done some fishing in Mobile River and throwing some split shot shrimp in there, and we've been caught some redfish that way. The one thing that I will say that at least in the Mobile River for redfish is the redfish that we found have been where there's a little minnow hatch. I don't know what kind of minnows they are, but they're really small, probably in that 2-inch range, just barely enough to where you can see them kind of touching the surface and almost looks like a little rain shower on the surface. They're not like rain minnows like you'd find out in the Gulf, but
you're talking like a fry size minnow.
Yeah, really tiny. The last couple of redfish bites we have found in the Mobile River, that's where I've found them, and it's not widespread. So if you know Mobile River and you know your way around it, and you notice some of those minnows right on the surface, you may and you haven't had a redfish bite, you may change some things up that would be more conducive for redfish. And we were doing it. All of ours have been coming on live shrimp, but if you're jig fishing or something, if you've got something that you like throwing at a redfish for jig wise, then that'd be a good thing to try if you see those minnows on the surface.
Yep, look for those minnows, man. That's a great tip. What about sheep's head? I've been seeing you doing a little sheep herding. What's been the ticket for those guys?
Man, I tell you what, the sheephead thing's been kind of interesting. We've had some really good runs of catching like 5 to 7, even I think we had one right around 8 pounds the other day. And then we were marking them like we were fishing this structure, and we had fish all over it. I mean, every day that we caught them, I was like, all right, I'd almost have to move the boat off the fish so I could encourage my customers that it was time to go in. Because if not, it felt like we were just going to keep catching.
Bite stop.
It gets hot.
But I mean, you do what?
I said that bite gets hot.
Yeah. So I mean, I could see them on side scan. Just steadily coming by, and I'm like, man, there's. I'm sitting in one spot, and we're probably seeing 30 or so on side scan at one time, and there's plenty of fish here, right? We're gonna be able to just come back and get them at any point in my day for the rest of my life. And we come back like 2 days later, and it's like, well, I'm not really marking them here. Let's make a couple drops just in case if they're hiding. Nothing, just freaking crickets. And moved around, hit some other structures, run across a few here or there, and then you find another school of fish bunched up, and you can catch them, and then go back the next day or 2 days later, and they're gone again. So
I guess they just move around that much.
They're doing some mega moving. And also with the sheephead, it seems like right after these cold fronts, they'll be on some of that dense, really heavy, dense structure. And I'm beginning to wonder if they're not kind of spreading out, kind of like we suspect that trout do when it starts warming up too. So,
okay.
And I'm not seeing that I don't see that like all the time, but this last month or so that has definitely been the case, where just because you found them there 2 days ago doesn't mean they're going to be there again. But I will say this: if they're there, it doesn't take long. Like within I don't know 2-3 minutes or less, you send a shrimp down there. If they're there, they're gonna bite it.
You do it.
It's not like
You doing all
it's
live?
not like
and
you're gonna be like, yeah. I've just been doing live and fresh dead shrimp. I know a lot of these guys like fiddlers, but I mean I'm fine with shrimp. It's bait shop like Hooked Up and Deer River and Fisherman Discount are the main bait shops I use, and they don't keep fiddlers on hand, so it's
Well, I'm curious.
Shrimp's easy for me to get.
I'm real curious. You know, I do a lot of sheep's head fishing in my own time, and I have to say they're pretty high up there on fish that I like to target, and they're also really, really fun. I have also experienced, you know, the bite is either really hot or either really off, and I'll have to go find them somewhere else, and it may not be as hot as it was, you know, 1 or 2 days prior, like you've kind of mentioned. Do you have you mentioned that you're fishing with shrimp, you know, fresh dead or live, and then you brought up the fiddler crabs that other people like. Do you have a bait of preference? I mean, you kind of highlighted where shrimp is your easiest to get, but do you feel like that's the best bait to target them with, or what's your idea on that?
Man, the $1 million question. So
oh, it's $1 million one.
Rolling back to more of my childhood, my dad did not want to buy live shrimp or buy bait, so my brother and I would have to scavenge the entire Dauphin Island area for as many hermit crabs as we could get, and fishing Dauphin Island Pier is usually what was on our menu. We also would take little seine nets and get seed shrimp out of the canals on the way to Dauphin Island. We would stop and get fiddler crabs. So there are times where we would go to Dauphin Island Pier, and being that you're stuck on the pier and you could look down and you could see the fish on the pilings on most days when the water was clean, it would more times than not, one of those 3 baits was going to outperform the other. What the magic ingredient was, I don't really know, but I would say that if you were exclusively wanting to just have the best sheephead day of your life, having that variety from shrimp to fiddlers and hermit crabs would be extremely
cover all your
bases.
bases.
And then I've heard the beach guys using the ghost shrimp. I don't know that I've ever used a ghost shrimp in my life. So
wow, that's
ghost shrimp and fiddler crabs are also on their menu.
Speaking from experience, harvesting your own sheep's head bait, like you did in your younger years at your dad's whim, is it can be really tough. So
it's a lot of work.
It is. It's a lot of work, from flipping rocks to digging in the grass or putting your fingers in holes in the sand. I mean, I have done it all, and banging open hermit crabs and everything else. It's a lot of work, but it's well rewarding, and they're really fun to catch. So it's fun. But do you have a temperature of preference, and maybe structure, and also a hook of preference? I have used multiple hooks, and I started sheep's head fishing with circle hooks, and really failed. And my buddy Matt Swigham's, he's got a YouTube channel, Salty Swigs. He does the owner mosquito hooks, and he put me onto those, and ever since I haven't changed. So I'm curious if you have a hook of preference, and maybe water temperature too, and structure as well.
Yeah, water temperature, I'd say anything greater than 54 degrees. I find that once the water gets below 54, they will get absolutely as lethargic as a daggum post front speckled trout. You can see them, you know they're there, and you can sit there. And I mean, at that point, if you're dead set to catch sheephead, you're best to probably do it in a way that where you can actually put a cork on there. They're the most nibbling. They're going to nibble at your bait. You're going to have to portion your bait down really small, and it's going to take a lot of patience to catch them when it's below about 54 degrees. That I would say my ideal, my perfect range would probably be that 57 to 70.
Okay.
And then as far as now, Cooper friggin' slammed his PB sheephead in August of all months. I mean, the water temperature was 88 degrees, and he caught one almost 10 pounds during the Condi rodeo. So
yeah, I saw
and we
that
had
picture.
A good bite
that was a big fish,
especially for a summer sheep.
Yeah, and we had a it wasn't just like a one-off fish. I mean, he caught a bunch of fish. So but I'll say that cooler water temperature, if you're around sheephead, it's gonna keep those other fish species from messing with your bait as bad. So that makes it more ideal as well. But then as far as hook, I've been absolutely in love with the Owner 1/0 K hook. It's their version of a Kale. I find that it's really user friendly for my customers. They don't necessarily have to feel the bite and set the hook based on feeling a bite. They can.
Okay.
I basically just tell them to just pump the rod up and down really slow, and then as soon as they feel some weight, they can then just tighten up on it.
Come tight.
And most time getting tight on it is all they have to do. Sometimes, I mean, and the beauty of that hook is the guy that really wants to jack him up and set the hook as hard as he can and try to come out of his shoes, he's still going to catch that fish.
That's right.
Like he's still going to go ahead and catch. But like, the kid or the lady or or maybe just the novice angler that doesn't really fully understand what setting the hook is, just getting tight on it and making that fish start to swim. And when that fish starts to pull drag, he's gonna engage that hook and hook himself, and it really works out. It works out well. It's been, I've been as I mentioned, been sheephead fishing since I was a little kid, and for the longest time we used the number 4 or number 6. Actually, I think we like the number 6 Eagle Claw little J hook, and
wow.
And so that little J hook was always good, but you had to feel the bite and you had to set the hook, and everything had to work out. And that was always a good hook for us. But I tell you, the beauty to that K hook is being able to hook the shrimp on tail first. And that's when you're going to catch more sheephead too. Instead of horn hooking your shrimp, take the tail off of the shrimp, pinch it off or bite it off. Actually, if you bite it off, it makes you more like one with the fish when you're starting to eat some of what he's trying to eat. And
you got to hone in.
That's right.
and then you take that shrimp and you thread that shrimp onto your hook. So then your presentation is not as appetizing to a speckled trout that way. But for a sheephead, the beauty of it is a lot of times he's going to come and go to take a single bite out of it. And if it bites it in the head, if it bites it towards the tail, either way, it's going to get almost the entire hook in its mouth.
Yeah.
And that, man, but there are times when the sheephead will be finicky and you got to horn hook them and make sure it's in the current right and everything, the presentation looks right. But generally for catching purposes, if you hook them the way I just mentioned, if you thread it on there, you're gonna get a lot more of those bites where they bite it 2 or 3 times before they get it. You're gonna get those fish hooked and in the boat a lot more frequently.
Man, that's a great tip. A bunch of great tips, ton of great tips, and an awesome report. We always enjoy you sharing your wisdom with our listeners. We appreciate the report. If folks want to get up with you and book a trip, try to get on some of this wintertime fishing, man, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Man, the best way, just go to uglyfishing.com, click the book now button, and you'll be able to see my live calendar. Still, I think we got 8 or 9 days left in December. Some of that's going to be tough weather, and it seems like a lot of times the approaching weather, the fish seem to bite a little bit better, and then a lot of times on our coldest day, the fish bite the best. So as long as you got some winter gear, decent clothing to stay warm on the water, then it's a great time to go out and catch some fish.
Yeah,
And
it is.
like I said, I do still have some availability.
I'd rather bundle up than be sweating my what off. I'd rather have a little more clothes on.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we appreciate it, Captain Patrick.
Yeah, I thank y'all for having me.
Like, yeah, man. We look forward to talking with you next time, buddy. Be safe out there.
See you guys.
That was an awesome inshore report from Captain Patric Garmeson with Ugly Fishing. You guys take a quick break and check out a few more of this week's sponsors. That report was brought to you by Admiral Shellfish. Admiral oysters are available at select restaurants and can also be purchased by the public at Bon Secours Fisheries, Inc. and Ahi Seafood in Fairhope, Alabama. Call for availability. From a simple, nutrient-dense appetizer at home or a shucking party with friends, Admiral oysters will steal the show. Follow their adventures on Instagram at Admiral Shellfish Co. And also brought to you by Photonus Defense. Photonus Defense is proud to offer the PD Pro line of night vision systems. The PD Pro series is the world's smallest and lightest night vision goggles built around the Photonus 16mm filmless 4G image intensifier tubes and their hybrid filmless 18mm image intensifier tubes. These ultra-light, ultra-compact night vision systems deliver cleanest images, best resolution, smallest, most transparent halo, and best overall performance and function of any night vision system available. The PDR Pro line consists of the PD Pro M 16mm monocular, the PD Pro B 16mm binocular, and the PD Pro Q panoramic night vision system. Photonus Defense, masters of darkness. All right, Tanner, let's head on down and get our last report of the day. We're going to talk to Captain Scott Kennedy, man. I'm very curious to see what Captain Scott's been doing in his kayak over at Whistling Waters Kayak Fishing and Outdoors. Welcome back to the show, Captain Scott. What you been up to, buddy?
Hey, appreciate you guys having me back on. It's getting to be that time of year where the water temperatures are cooling down and everything, and we're getting some shorter days and everything, and then that just kind of means the trout are starting to move up the rivers. The sheephead bite's getting good, so kind of what I've been doing here lately. Starting out the mornings, we've been doing a little bit of trout fishing. Just the first hour or two. Some days we've had some really great mornings. Other days, it's been a little lackluster, but we've definitely been getting on some decent specs. Hadn't found any of the giant ones yet, but finding some some good slot size specs, and just kind of been working. The water's been real clear here lately on our side of the bay, so I've been working some of the natural colors. That little slick, or I'm sorry, the Slick Junior, that new one they put out has been very good to me lately. And just kind of throwing that, just some of those more natural colors, kind of leaning towards the clears and the whites, that kind of stuff. But yeah, that's been pretty good for us. And those days that we've gotten out there and the trout bite's been a little bit slow, we've switched over to the sheephead, and that's definitely been the most consistent thing for us is just getting after the sheephead and kind of doing my same old, just the split shot rig, small hook, the live fiddler crabs when I can get a hold of them has definitely been the ticket. And yeah, we've just been finding some good sheephead and everything lately too.
That's great news, man. We were just talking to Captain Patrick. How have you been rigging the Slick Junior to have success with a jig head or a swim bait hook or under a popping cork? What have you been doing to have success with that guy?
I've been doing a jig head, but been going real light with it. At the heaviest, I'm going an 1/8 ounce. A lot of the days, I'm kind of leaning towards that 16th ounce. Something just to kind of give it that real slow presentation, just to kind of let it really dance around. And it seems like I said, the water temperatures are definitely cooling down. So the specs, especially, have kind of been on a little bit slower bite and everything. So it seems like that slower presentation has definitely been a key to kind of get them to commit to it.
Interesting, man. That's a lot along the lines of what Patrick said. Sure. He's throwing it on a 1/8 or a 1/16
He's having a ton of
ounce.
Success with that thing just falling straight down.
Yeah,
getting a lot of bites on the Slick Junior falling vertical.
Yeah, that's what he said. He mentioned a vertical fall rather than a horizontal, which is a lot like the big slick.
Yep.
And so pretty cool, man. They got some great baits and versatile stuff. Captain Patrick mentioned that he's loving the Swamp Thing color and a little bit of the Bobcat. Do you have any specific colors that people in your area may want to go out and maybe buy, and what you've had success on?
That Swamp Thing has definitely been good to me lately too. And the one I've been using, I hate to admit, I can't remember the name of it offhand. It's kind of that just kind of like clear, almost like a little bit of a silverish color. That one has been real good to me.
Is it like that on the full body, or does it have the bright pink tail on it?
No, it's definitely the full body.
Yeah, that's probably their peppermint color.
Peppermint.
Yeah,
There's
a good one.
Yeah, a bunch of good colors, man.
Yeah, I think peppermint is the one I've been using. That one has been definitely been good to me.
Awesome, man. What about the sheep's head? What have you fishing deep structure? You fishing hard structure? You fishing grass? What's been the success there?
So I've noticed, especially after that big cold front we had last week, the deeper the better. Kind of my sweet spot, prior to that had been, that 5 to 7 foot range. I'm starting to find a lot of my fish now kind of in that, 8 to 9 foot at least. And it seems like the deeper I get, the better. So, kind of if I can find somewhere, 12 to 18 feet, that has been where I found definitely my numbers and especially some of my bigger fish too.
Well, that's a really good tip, man. I was going to ask you. We talked to Patrick about so many tips on the sheep's head and preferences.
Yeah, we sheeped out.
We did. We totally sheeped out for a minute. But you brought up some depth, which is one thing that I didn't get to bring up to him on air. We talked about it a little bit after. But what is your favorite depth? I feel like on this side of the bay and kind of in my own time last year and some this year, like you've kind of highlighted there, they seem to be moving. Patrick said the same thing. One day they're in one place and then the next day they're in another. I feel like 4 to 9 feet has kind of been a personal preference for me, but you just mentioned 12 to 18. So what do you feel like is the best depth to target these fish overall, not just this time of year, but throughout the
Consistently
fall
overall?
Yeah, throughout the fall and the winter months. What's your favorite type of depth?
Yeah, if I had a perfect world where I got to choose everything, 6 to 10 kind of is my preference. Especially
Nice.
being in the kayak. You definitely sacrifice a lot of your leverage in the kayak. Sitting down and everything. So being in that kind of 6 to 10 foot range, it gives you a lot of kind of wiggle room where you have definitely a lot less chance of them, being able to wrap you around the piling and everything, and being able to get them up to the surface. When you only have to lift them up, about a rod length or so, definitely makes it a lot easier for you.
For sure, man. I've watched some of your videos and watching, Tanner and the guys that target the sheep's head. I've been watching Brandon Collier do it with a cane pole some. I mean, sometimes you got to set the hook on those things. How do you not roll yourself right out of that kayak sometimes whenever you're setting the hook?
You definitely want a stable kayak. That is.
I saw you got a new one recently.
Yeah, I did. I made a big switch. That was, I kind of teased at it in my last video. But yeah, I made a big switch from the Hobie to the new canoe, and it's definitely been a big switch. But I'm extremely happy with it, and it's it is definitely a very stable kayak, and just like you said, being able to stand up or be able to really set that hook and get that leverage on them, it makes a big difference from some of the traditional kayaks and stuff where you really have to watch your center of gravity and everything.
Yeah, I know old wobbly Tanner over here likes to go fishing or go swimming out of his canoe.
I go swimming a good deal. It's
I feel like it's once a week he texts me. My phone's jacked up. I went swimming again today.
It's a passion of mine. I think I tell you, it like wintertime swimming.
To the best of us. Yeah,
Polar Bear Club.
I have done it a few times myself. It's never fun, but everybody does it eventually.
It is what it is, man. I think just 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was fishing with Sean Lawless and my buddy Matt Swiggs and Brock Meyer. We were all over in Navarre. We launched our kayaks on the beach side, and I think we were out for 5 or 10 minutes. I put my first bait out, and I reached around to put it in the rod holder, and what do you know? I rolled right over.
Oh, no.
Go figure. But he did talk about the hook sets on the kayak. I've noticed in my canoe sometimes, I'll go to set that hook and I'll definitely make tension with the fish, sometimes even hook up for a minute and then pull hooks. Do you feel like there's anything that you can do to kind of minimize that on the kayak or the canoe? And to me, it may be the angle of the hook set. Do you have any tips for that?
I wish I did, but I tell you, there's not a whole lot you can do for it. The best I can tell you is to just get, I run a pretty heavy rod compared to what I'd normally use. Like, at the bare minimum, using a medium action rod, I usually try to lean towards the medium heavy. That way, when you do set that hook, you've got everything in it, and you can really snatch them.
Yeah, it is. Got some backbone.
Yeah, definitely. But at the end of the day, that's just one of the things in a kayak you kind of, or a canoe or anything at that, it's just you kind of sacrifice that, that hard leverage that you would have with a boat where, you've got some kind of stopping resistance to it.
Absolutely. And in my experience, we talked about this with Patric, but the hook also plays a tremendous role in setting the hook on these sheep's head. And prior to really honing in these fish, I was using a circle hook. Now I'm using a mosquito, an owner mosquito hook, or a Gamakatsu octopus hook. Patric Garmeson said he's using an owner K hook.
Mm-hmm.
What hook are you enjoying to target these sheep's head with?
Just like you mentioned, I'm a big the octopus hook. Like if I can get that, a size 2 or 4, that is definitely my preferred hook. Because just like you said, it kind of get away from that circle hook, having to just kind of let the fish set the hook itself.
Yep.
That octopus hook really lets you kind of really set into them. And kind of my thing, I like that thinner wire on it because a lot of the, you figure about the sheephead, their whole top and bottom of their mouth is covered in teeth. So,
yep.
That thinner wire just allows you to have more options to kind of dig that hook in and really get that good hook set on them.
Yeah, get in between all those chompers for sure.
Exactly.
What about redfish, man? Been seeing any of those fellas over there?
I tell you, the redfish have kind of been a little bit elusive for me. We've caught a few here and there, while we're fishing for the trout and everything. But sad to say, I haven't caught a whole lot of redfish lately.
Yeah, just been incidentals.
Yep. And that's, partially just because I hadn't been, I necessarily haven't been targeting them just because the sheephead bite's been good and we've been catching some trout.
Sure.
But yeah, it's been a little weird. Usually this time of year we find a lot more of the redfish when I'm, doing the speckled trout fishing. But it's been a little bit off for me. But there's definitely a few around, and the ones we have caught have been extremely fat, and you can tell they're eating well. But yeah, but mostly it's been just kind of speckled trout and sheephead for me lately.
Yep, man, that's great. Anything Captain Patric was talking about, some big bird schools or some bird flocks and those schools being under them. Anything giving the fish away for you?
Me lately, I hadn't necessarily seen a whole lot of the birds or anything. I've just kind of been focusing on some of these smaller creeks and rivers and that kind of stuff. But the fish have definitely been setting up exactly where I want them to be. Just kind of these fallen tides. I've been focusing on the creek mouths, that kind of thing, the big bends where you find these deeper pockets and stuff. Even, with this past week or so of, kind of warmer days and stuff, I've still found a lot of my fish kind of hanging towards these deeper pockets and stuff. So that's definitely where I've spent a lot of my time and kind of what I look for to find those deeper pockets. So like if you get into a river or a creek or something, you can find it on the map, or if you're out there or anything, just anywhere that it makes like a hard bend or anything. Usually, that outer side of that, that bend is where the current and everything is kind of ripped out a deeper pocket. And that's been what I've been focusing on a lot lately, especially for, like I said, the trout and everything.
Yeah, man, those are great tips. That's a great report, man. We appreciate you always sharing your wisdom with our listeners. If folks want to get up with you and book a trip, what's the best way to get in contact with you?
Yeah, so if you want to book a trip or anything, you can either give me a call or text at 251-408-2604, or you can shoot me an email at kayaking.kennedy@gmail.com, or you can check out Whistling Waters on the Fishing Chaos app and see all my dates, rates, and availability and everything like that.
Awesome, man. We appreciate the report as always, Cap, and be safe out there, man. It's getting a little colder. Be safe.
Oh yeah, definitely have to keep that in mind as a kayak angler. You gotta stay dry in these colder temperatures for sure.
Yeah, you don't want to go swimming right now.
No.
I promise.
I think Tanner knows. Yeah. Tanner's starting his own polar bear club. He's jumping in every month of the winter.
I'm taking over you and Joe's thing.
We definitely did that.
I'm gonna start my own thing, and you and Joe are gonna, I guess, watch.
That's fine. Yeah, you probably can talk us into participating again. We did that one time.
Yeah, you've already done that.
Yeah. All right, Captain Scott. We appreciate it, man. You guys have great holidays. If we don't talk to you, we'll talk to you next time, buddy.
All right, sounds good. I appreciate you having me back on.
It's always good to hear from Captain Scott Kennedy with Whistling Waters, Kayak Fishing and Outdoors. You guys take a quick break and check out a few of this week's sponsors. That segment was brought to you by CCA Alabama, a great way to support conservation projects like the Claude Petite Flounder and Speckled Trout Hatchery in the University of South Alabama Cobia Tagging Project is through the purchase of a distinctive CCA Alabama saltwater fishing license plate. You guys head over to Alabama Department of Revenue's distinctive license plate page at revenue.gov to get yours. And also brought to you by Richardoni Family Dentistry. Dr. Josh is a local dentist with 11 years of experience and is also an avid angler. He enjoys ripping lips as much as he enjoys making your smile perfect. At Richardoni Family Dentistry, they treat their patients like family and friends. They accept most dental insurances and see patients of all ages. Is your skin a little wrinkled from years of sun damage? Dr. Josh also offers cosmetic Botox. Don't let an achy tooth or a broken tooth from biting your fishing line too much keep you from a great day outdoors. Or if you just need a checkup, call them today at 251-342-6672 to book an appointment today. Man, we got to do What Did You Learn before we get out of here this week? What'd you pick up from today's show?
Man, this What Did You Learn is one of my favorite segments. It's something
it can really catch up to you if you're not careful.
I know you got to be.
We could have this part of the show like 30 or 45 minutes.
We could, but you got to be a loyal listener
to get all these little tidbits.
Yeah, to catch these real tips. Guys that spend 250 days out on the water. I mean, what they've got to offer is just insane.
For sure.
And I mean, we've got our notepads.
I got a whole notepad full.
Yeah, we got our notepads in front of us. I think both of us have 2 or 3 pages written down of questions that we've asked or wanted to ask and didn't, or things that we learned. I mean,
what's your big takeaway? So we did the offshore report.
Right.
We did. What'd you learn after that?
If folks want to hear the What Did You Learn about the offshore report, they can go listen to the Northwest Florida podcast the first segment. This inshore stuff that we learned from Scott Kennedy and Captain Patric Garmeson, man, I thought was really cool. And, Patrick, he mentioned the lipless crankbaits, and that's not something that I've ever
have that written down over here.
Yeah.
Definitely gonna have to explore that a little bit.
Right. It's not something that I've ever even explored or taken a part of. It's a freshwater lure. I got a couple of buddies right now that have been experimenting with your traditional jerk baits, and they've been really catching a lot of fish on the lipped jerk baits and stuff like that. So I think I'll be buying some lipless crankbaits. And another thing that Patrick said was, he really likes the 57 to 70 degree range. Yeah. This time of year, especially for sheep's head. And he kind of mentioned that those fish get lethargic after 54 degrees or lower. And I thought that was a really cool tip. So those are kind of some of the main things that I'm going to take away from this. What about you, man? What'd you learn?
One thing that I definitely have written down over here with stars and asterisks by it was Captain Patrick talking about tail hooking that shrimp for the sheep's head.
So interesting, man.
Right?
Makes
sense.
Have you, there's a guy, Captain Kyle Johnson, I think over in Mississippi. Yeah. And we've talked about some sheep's head recently, and he does the same thing. Yeah. These guys are catching a lot of fish. So the fact that they're both doing the same thing has to mean something. What else did you get?
No doubt, man. Definitely. I mean, I think I said it after the offshore segment, keep it simple.
Yep.
And that could be applicable for inshore, offshore, and onshore. Get your chip shot down and your putt down before you start driving 400 yards. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man.
I'm not even a golfer. I don't know where that came from.
You don't always have to go for the power shot. You just got to hit the fairway.
Do what you can do well, get very proficient at that, and then you can start branching out into the more complicated things.
I like it.
All right, guys, that wraps up another great segment. Let's take a quick break and check out a few more of this week's great sponsors. That segment was brought to you by L&M Marine. L&M Marine has something for everyone, from small hunting boats, pontoon boats, to bigger bay boats and offshore hybrids. L&M Marine LLC prides itself on its customer service and knows how important it is to have someone you can trust and to be taken care of. They are locally owned and regularly support the community. L&M Marine provides superior customer service and has an entire team that consists of professional sales members, finance experts, service technicians, and a knowledgeable parts and accessory staff to support you. Go visit their friendly, reliable, and experienced staff, now located only 6 miles north of I-10 at 34600 Highway 59 in Stapleton, Alabama, or give them a call at 251-937-1380. And also brought to you by United Bank. United Bank knows what an important role agriculture plays in our local economy. At United Bank, they are here to support local farmers with financial products and services designed specifically for agribusiness, including real loans for farmland, equipment loans, working lines of credit, and more. Truth is, they deeply value the contributions agriculture makes to our communities, and they help our local farmers build successful businesses. They want to see you succeed. Learn more at unitedbank.com or stop by any United Bank branch. United Bank, all loans subject to credit approval, equal housing opportunity lender, member FDIC. Man, Tanner, it was a pleasure hosting the show with you today. Thanks for being on.
Dude, thank you so much for having me. It's
Enjoyed
always
it,
a
man.
pleasure to be on, whether that's giving a report or coming here and recording the podcast with you.
Yeah, I've been a little feel like a little head cold. I feel like you've been kind of my kickstand for today.
No way,
Been
man.
trying not to talk so much.
You guys are crushing it over here all the time. I'm thankful to be a part of it, and great days outdoors, and the Alabama Fishing Report has just been totally crushing it, man. We're super thankful as anglers to hear what you have to
It's
offer.
been
and
fun, man.
I'm so appreciative to be on the show, man. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, man. We'll have you next time. Can't wait.
Absolutely. We'll be around.
All right, folks, that's going to wrap it up this week. You guys, please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts. If you'd like us to email you the podcast each week, just text the word fishing to 314-665-1767. Again, just text the word fishing to 314-665-1767. Subscribe to our email list, and we'll send you the new show each week. You guys keep whacking them. We'll talk to y'all next week.
This week's Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report brought to you by me, Angelo DiPaola, The Coastal Connection. Find us online at thecoastalconnection.com.
And also brought to you by Sam's Stop and Shop. Sam's Stop and Shop is your one-stop shop located at 27122 Canal Road in Orange Beach. Sam's has a little bit of everything, including a deli, inshore, offshore, and surf fishing tackle. They also have bait, clothing, groceries, name brand sunglasses, and so much more. Stop by and shop or call them at 251-981-4245 today. And also brought to you by Test Calibration. Test Calibration is your source for sales and service of diesel turbochargers and fuel injection systems since 1976. Contact them at 800-822-0057 or visit them online at testcalibratindieselandturbo.com. And also brought to you by Bucks Island. They have new pontoon boats, bass boats, bow riders, and aluminum boats for sale. They provide boat service on all kinds of boats, even if they weren't purchased from Bucks. Visit them at 4500 Highway 77 in Southside, Alabama, or give them a call at 256-442-2588. Also brought to you by MB Ranch King. MB Ranch King hunting blinds and feeders are built to last, right here in the USA. They offer high-quality, easy-to-use corn and protein feeders that can be filled with both feet on the ground. Call Kevin today for more info or a quote at 205-807-2937. MB Ranch King, built in the pursuit of perfection. Also brought to you by Hilton's Real-Time Navigator, bringing you the highest quality online satellite fishing chart since 2004. Your source for sea temps, altimetry, currents, and watercolor at hiltonsoffshore.com. And also brought to you by National Land Realty. If you're in the market to sell your land, check out the fastest growing, most innovative land brokerage in the country at nationalland.com. And also brought to you by Fish Bites. Since 1999, Car Specialty Baits, Inc. has been busy revolutionizing the fishing industry with their game-changing brand of baits and lures called Fish Bites. Check out the full line of scented saltwater and freshwater baits at fishbites.com. Also brought to you by Dixie Supply and Baker Metalworks are proud to be your metal roofing headquarters for over 40 years. Save time and money by buying from the most reliable manufacturer on the Gulf Coast. Buy it today, pick it up today. With the addition of their new store in Cantonment, Florida, they now have 8 locations to serve you. Dixie Supply and Baker Metalworks, your metal roofing headquarters. And also brought to you by Killer Dock. Killer Dock uses marine-grade aluminum to make fabulous fish cleaning tables and stunning canopies that will keep us out of the sun. Killer Dock combines durability, function, and design to uniquely upgrade your entire dock experience. Visit killerdock.com to see more.